Good morning. What a beautiful day. Uh, I've been mentioning before that they were going to have a prayer march in Woodbury. Yesterday, my son and my wife and we all went down and we made the march with them, and we had 357 participants. We had a lot of good prayer. Uh, it was a very good experience, and I hope we do that again. That was a great thing. A lot of good prayers went up, uh, and which brings me to my lesson today, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about prayer. Uh, Found this lesson on the internet the other day, and I got to reading it, and I really liked it, and I'd like to share part of it with you. Prayer is, for the most part, an untapped resource, an unexplored continent where the untold treasure remains to be unearthed. Uh, the prayer is the great tragedy, the secret guidance, and let's see, let me start off. The great tragedy of life is not unanswered prayer, it's an unoffered prayer. That means you don't you if you don't offer a prayer, you're not going to do any good, so you got to offer up your prayers. um, Instead of it being something we do every day, like breathing, eating, walking, and talking, it seems to become like that little glass box on the wall that says break in case of an emergency. It's true that so often we associate prayer with crisis in our life. That means that we don't want to pray until something bad happens, and that's not good. We need to be praying constantly, and we need prayers to be going up to the Lord. And it's not that the Lord don't know what we need. We just need to be asking Him for it. We need to let Him know. God knows every hair on our head. He knows our DNA. He knows everything about us. He knows what we think. He knows what we do. And, He knows what we need before we ask Him, but we need to ask Him. We need to be in conversation with our Lord. In that way, when we're in conversation with Him, we're not, that gets us out of this world and the things that's going on here. When we spend time with God, that means we're with Him. We're communicating with Him, and we're not in this world. Here's a little story here. It says, I heard a story the other day of a man who encountered a bit of trouble flying his airplane. He called the control tower and said, pilot to tower. I'm 300 miles from the airport. I'm 600 miles above the ground. I'm out of fuel. I am descending rapidly. Please advise. Over. And tower to the pilot. The dispatcher began. Repeat after me. Our Father, who art in heaven. Prayer is, for the most part, an untapped resource, an unexplored continent where untold treasure remains to be unearthed. It is talked about more than anything else and practiced less than anything else. And yet, for the believer, it remains one of the greatest gifts our Lord has given outside of salvation. In 1952, Albert Einstein was delivering a lecture at the campus of Princeton University. A doctoral student asked the famous scientists, what is there left in the world to do research on? With considerable thought and profoundly, Einstein replied, find out about prayer. Somebody must find out about prayer. Paul was somebody who understood prayer and its power. Prayer was part of Paul's life, and he took it for granted that it would be part of the life of every Christian. You cannot really be a good Christian and not pray. It's just like you cannot have a good marriage if you don't talk to your wife. You can be a Christian and not pray, just like you can be married and not talk to your wife. But in both circumstances, you will be miserable. Prayer is the pipeline of communication between God and His people, between God and those who love Him. Paul begins by saying, devote yourselves to prayer, to continue earnestly in prayer. The original language, it says, continue steadfastly in prayer. The word translated continue fastly is one word of the original language. It can be translated persist in, adhere to firmly, or to remain devoted, or to give unremitting care to. It carries with the idea of dedication. Of the 10 times it's used in the New Testament, 4 of them have to do with being devoted to prayer. It is a very powerful word, and in its verse it's given as an imperative or a command. In other words, persistence in prayer is not an option for the Christian. It is an order from the Lord Himself. 2 of the most important instructive parables Jesus ever told on prayer, one in Luke 18 and the other in Luke 11. Both have to do with being persistent and not giving up in prayer. Luke 18:1 says, now He was telling them in a parable to show them that in all times they ought to pray and not lose heart. Luke 11:9, verse 9 is where you find the promise that says, ask and it shall be given to you, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened to you. Each of those verbs are in present tense, active voice, and could be translated keep on asking, keep on seeking, keep on knocking. Jesus does not want us to give up in prayer. He instructs us to be persistent. So I'm gonna cut it off right there. I think we'll continue with this next week. There's some more really good points on here. I also heard a story this week that I want to share with you. It's about a little boy, and that he lived in Denver, Colorado. That's back when Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. So this little boy, he had cancer, and he knew that Dwight D. Eisenhower was coming to Denver, Colorado, and he wanted to meet with him. The little boy wrote him a letter. Well, the president was in Denver, and he remembered the little boy. So they made their way, the Secret Service, he wanted to go talk to him. So they all got together, took off, and went to the little boy's neighborhood. Dwight D. Eisenhower went up, knocked on the door of the house. The little boy's father answered the door. He came to the door. He had a ragged t-shirt on. He hadn't shaved in a couple of days. He had some old wore out breeches on. And he answered the door. And the little boy snuck up behind his dad and went out and had a conversation with Mr. President Eisenhower. They walked up and down the sidewalk. Everybody in the neighborhood saw him. They were so impressed that the president would actually come and talk to a little boy like that. And everybody was happy about that situation except for one man, and that was the little boy's daddy. The little boy's daddy was very upset that he met the president when he had his old ragged t-shirt on and his old ragged pants, and he hadn't shaved and he looked bad, and that man was worried about that for years to come. And that relates to us when we meet the Lord. Will we have ragged on ragged clothes, or will we have our spiritual clothes? Will they be clean? Will they be white as snow? Will they be washed in the blood of the Lamb? How will you meet the Lord? Will you meet him with your clean clothes? I hope so. I hope that's the way we can look at our lives, that we go through life and we try to have our clean spiritual clothes on and be ready to meet the Lord. That's the end of my lesson for today. Thank you for listening. Today was the first day that we got to go to church in a long time, and I was really happy to do that. And that was a great feeling to get back in church, and really missed that. So I hope you are either going to church or that you can get to go back soon. Hopefully we can put all this behind us. That's the end of my lesson. God bless you. Have a good week.